Coming to paperback and Kindle this fall, E-Steam Blast from the Past. Hell's aspiring angel takes on her demonic doppelganger in this time-traveling, action-packed E-Steam series adventure. Pre-order your copy of E-Steam Blast from the Past on Kindle with a bonus E-Steam comic going for the paperback this fall. Many of today's comic book pros oftentimes believe that comics are all about pushing some sort of social message or pushing some sort of political agenda. And others believe that comics is all about being creative and expressing yourself through your stories and your art. And neither of these are the case at all when it comes down to comics. Now, yes, you do get an opportunity to go out here and be creative and express yourself. However, you have to understand that comic book publishing is a part of the publishing business. And as a business, your primary goal is going to be sales, because it's sales that is going to be the thing that builds your reputation, and it's going to be sales that's going to be the thing that allows you to gain and advance to other opportunities in the comic book industry and beyond. Now, most comic pros today don't understand the concept of sales, because many came into the business because they thought it was about either some sort of political agenda or it was about some sort of creativity. And they didn't really think about the business aspect of publishing, and they didn't think about the business aspect of publishing as related to their careers. And you have to really think about the business aspect of publishing, because that's the thing that's going to allow you to grow in the comic book business, and that's the thing that's going to allow you to build your reputation and your brand in the comic book business. Now, sales is very important, because sales is the indicator to whether or not customers are excited about your product and enthusiastic about your product. And sales is something you really have to keep your eye on, because if your numbers aren't strong, then you're not going to get much work as related to business comic publishers like Marvel Comics, DC Comics, Image Comics, Boom Comics, or Dynamite Comics, and you're not going to be able to get things funded like Indiegogos and Kickstarters on your own intellectual property. Now, when it comes down to sales, there are two aspects a comic pro, whether they be a writer, an artist, an inker, a colorist, or a letterer, needs to focus on. The first aspect of sales they have to focus on is the page. Now, the page is the most important, one of the most important parts. I say 50% of one of the most important parts of a comic pro's profile, because what's on that page is the thing that is going to be in front of the customer. And with the page being in front of the customer, that page needs to be its very best, and that page needs to leave a strong first impression on the customer. So all the aspects of the page have to be something that draws in the reader and compels them to say, this is a great comic. So when you have a great page, that's one of the things that's going to sell you, one, to the comic fan who is buying the book on the regular, and two, it's going to sell you to other editors and other freelancers out here, like people who run Kickstarters and Indiegogos, and allow you an opportunity to book other jobs. So you definitely want to focus on having a strong page, because that's the first thing that customers see, and that's the first thing that leaves a strong first impression on the customer. So a good comic writer, a good comic artist, a good letterer, they're focused on making sure they can make aspects of that page pop, because if those aspects on the page are popping for the reader and possibly other freelancers out here who are doing things like Kickstarters and Indiegogos, then that's going to book you more jobs. Because if you have a very strong page, this again is the thing that is selling you, and you have to focus on selling, because selling is what gets people to go out here and buy your book, and it also gets those people to start spreading word of mouth about you, because that word of mouth is the thing that's going to allow you to book other gigs with other companies, and it's also going to be the thing that gets people to go pick up your book or support your next project, like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo, when you're doing an independent project. So word of mouth is how 90% of books are sold, and it's how 90% of comics are sold. So you really have to focus on making sure your page is strong, because that's how you build that word of mouth on two aspects: the customer aspect and the professional aspect. Now, the other part of selling, it has to do with the creators themselves. And as a creator, you're not just an independent contractor doing freelance work, you are also a salesman. And you're not just selling your work, you are also selling yourself. And this is something many comic pros don't understand, that trade authors like myself understand. We understand that when we publish a paperback book, a novel, or a nonfiction book, we're not just selling the book, we are also selling ourselves. And we have to sell ourselves, because people just don't buy products, they also buy personalities, because it's the personality of the person that engages people. It's the personality of the person that makes people feel like this person is somebody they relate to, somebody that they like, and somebody they trust. And because they feel like they can trust this person, they feel like they can trust the products that they're offering. And a lot of people in the comic book industry really don't focus on the personality and the people aspect of sales. And this is one of the things that leads to many books winding up struggling as related to sales, especially on platforms like social media, because a lot of today's comic pros, they get on platforms like social media and they start going into very hostile attacks of people on social media, making all sorts of attacks on customers, not understanding that when you are on social media, you are representing yourself, and you're not just representing yourself and your own personal views. You, as an independent contractor working on this work for hire project, is representing this company, representing the products you offer. And because you're representing the company and the products you offer, and even in the case of your own independent projects, especially if you're working on an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter, you're working for yourself, and part of that aspect is going out here to sell, and you want to sell yourself so that when people see your product, they see somebody they can trust, somebody they believe in, and somebody who gives them the comfort of knowing they're going to get a quality product. And a lot of people on the social media, they start getting personal, they start getting angry, and they start attacking people, and they don't understand how this drives away your customer base. You definitely want to maintain a very professional profile on places like social media and places like Comic-Cons, because this again is about selling yourself. And another aspect of selling yourself is forming that relationship with the customer. Really solid salespersons go out here and they form relationships with their customers, and that relationship they form with the customer allows them to know they can trust any product that they have or any product that they offer, because they know it's going to be top quality. So this is something many comic pros don't really focus on, is the sales aspect, and they don't understand that comics just aren't about creating the comic, it is also about selling the comic, because the selling is one of the big things that is related to the business, because it is a business, and your job, after you put in all of these hours working on a script, working on art, hiring freelancers like artists or letterers to work on your projects, or writers to work on your project, you want to reap a reward for your work, and you have to have a sales mind if you want to go out here and get those dividends returned back to you, plus a profit. So you have to understand about sales if you want to get into comics. And too many, sadly, comic pros today are not focused on sales, and that's why sales numbers are low. Many of them out there are either focused heavily on the creative aspect or using comics as a political platform, and that's not what this is about at all. This is all about making sure you get the sales numbers and making sure you continue to increase your sales numbers, because if you can go out here and get your sales numbers up and get your sales numbers strong, then you can start having the leverage to go out here and make other business ventures. Like if you're working at a comic company, using that leverage to go out here and launch an independent character on an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter, or if you've already done an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter, launching another character on a second issue by saying, hey, the last Kickstarter I did had 5,000 sales. Now we're going to launch a number 2, and we're hoping to get to 10,000 sales. Or if you've done your own comic at a company like a Marvel or a DC or a Dynamite or an Image, you can go in there and say, okay, when I started doing this run of comics, it was at 3,000 sales. Now this book is up to 10,000 sales. Now I can leverage a higher page rate for my work because I'm generating revenue for the comic, and the book is currently selling higher numbers due to me being involved on the project. Because if you can come in there and get the sales numbers up, that's going to build your reputation, and it's long term going to lead to you getting more gigs booked for you. So you really want to focus on those sales, because those sales numbers, again, are things you can take to other companies as proof of your work, proof that you have an audience, and you can take it as proof to others to sell your services to other comic publishers or to launch your own projects. Because when you have strong sales, you're going to start to get the attention of investors, and when you get the attention of those investors, they're going to want to start offering you far more serious money, because they know that your name and your reputation are going to be connected to something that, one, is successful, and two, to someone who people know as a professional they can rely on to present a quality product to them. So that's why you really want to focus on your sales, because your sales numbers are the thing you can take into any business transaction and show tangible numbers to those people who you're trying to work with, and saying, hey, this book I did, this Stop Simpin', did 2,000 to 3,000 sales, for example, or a book like Misadventures of Captain Save-'em did 3,000 sales, or a book like The Man Crisis did 500, 400 sales. I can walk in and say, I've got these numbers, and many of these comic pros could say the same thing. I have this amount of numbers, so when I come on here, I'm going to be an asset to this product, and if I own that product and I'm coming in with these kind of numbers, I can come in and I can actually leverage a better deal. Now, many of today's comic pros, when they walk in these days, they're looking to get what either is an option, in many cases, for a Netflix deal, and that's a bad deal because they didn't really focus on their sales. An option is where somebody buys a temporary option to get the rights and they hold on to it for a year to 2 years in an effort to try to get the money to fund the project. And in that time, what they're doing is shopping your product around, your project around, and usually at the end of the 2 years of the option or the year of the option, what happens is your product, your project has been shopped around, and many of the readers at the studios wind up already knowing about this project, having a file of that project, and writing notes on that project to why they didn't want to pick it up. So the reason why these guys are going for options is because they're going for the easy money because it's low, because of their low sales. But if you have higher sales, guess what? You don't have to go the option route. You can go directly to the executives with your entertainment lawyer and the agent that comes to you, and you can negotiate a stronger deal where you're getting your project greenlit and you're getting 3 to 5% of the production budget of a $40 to $200 million film. So that's the difference between having strong sales and weak sales. Weak sales can lead to you making less money on anything that you're working on, and it can also impede your career, like many of today's what they call SJW comic pros who want to get these Netflix deals as options where they get maybe $2,000-3,000, whereas a guy who goes out here and knows how to sell, they know how to sell not only what's on the page, but they also know how to sell themselves. And because they know how to sell themselves, they know how to get a better deal as related to their other intellectual properties or to booking more jobs. And this is all a part of the aspect of business many comic pros don't think about, but it's one you really have to think about, because if you're not focused on your sales, then you're not going to be able to move forward in your career. So you really have to focus on your sales, because what's on your page is selling in the customer's hand the issue that they're holding, a back issue, or the next issue. And when you're at a Comic-Con or you're on social media, what's selling you is you providing good customer service to the customer and engaging the customer to the point where they not only see the characters you create as great, but they see you as a great person. And because they see you as a great person, they want to buy more of your comics, and they want to buy more of whatever other merchandise you are selling or what other projects you're working on. Because again, when you're selling, it's not just about selling a comic, it is also about selling you. And in the publishing business, it's all about sales because everything is so competitive. 90% of all books fail, and many of those books didn't have to fail because all it took was the author or the artist getting engaged with the public. And it's that engagement with the public that gets people excited about the product. So it's all about selling, and you have to know how to sell. And this is a skill that many comic pros need to work on, because if you don't believe in your product enough to sell it, nobody else is going to have the passion or interest in buying it. Now, if you want to pick up some of my SJS Direct fantasy fiction on the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, or books in the Spinsterella trilogy or the Thetas, you can find all of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And you can also find many of my books on digital platforms like Smashwords, Barnes & Noble, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more comic videos, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, the man with